By 1947, Steve Morrison, then a lieutenant, had transferred to Los Alamos, where he worked on the earliest nuclear weapon systems. In yet another naval housing facility near Albuquerque, New Mexico, Jim's little sister, Anne, was born. While Anne was still a baby, one of the enduring strands of the Jim Morrison mythology is said to have begun. One that nobody has ever been able to convincingly substantiate, despite the pleasingly enigmatic sheen it confers on Morrison's memory. The story of the morning, as related by Jim on tape nearly 25 years later. He came across the Indians scattered on Dawn's highway, as he poetically put it. Suspiciously poetic, one is tempted to add. According to legend, early one morning in 1948, the Morrison family, along with both of Jim's grandparents, were driving along the two-lane desert highway that connects Albuquerque to Santa Fe when they came upon the aftermath of a head-on collision between a car and a truck carrying Pueblo and Hopi Indians. Pulling over, Steve and Paul got out of the car and went over to survey the ghastly scene. Crumpled, bloodied bodies lay strewn across the road, some dead, others seriously injured. Some were screaming out and crying for help. Jim, who had been dozing in the back of the car, came fully awake and tried to clamber out of the car for a better look, but was held back by his mother and grandmother. With no mobile phones in those days, the best Steve and Paul decided they could do for these poor people was to get back in the car and drive as fast as it would carry them to the next gas station, where they could use the phone to call for the emergency services, which is what they did. An increasingly distraught Jim glued to the rear window as they drove away. Overcome with excitement and fear, Jim pestered his folks with questions, observations, suggestions, and more questions. The boy would not shut up, becoming more and more hysterical, until finally, in an effort to calm him down, Steve looked over his shoulder at his son in the back seat and told him with a firm expression, "Jim, it didn't really happen. It was a bad dream." A bad dream Jim would claim altered the course of his whole life when, in 1970, he recalled in an interview, later used on the released Doors album An American Prayer, how there had been Indians scattered all over the highway, bleeding to death. It was, he said, the first time he had ever tasted fear. He went on to claim that he now believed that the souls of the dead Indians had somehow found their way into his soul, and are still there. It's a wonderfully cinematic story, of course, and one that fits beautifully in the telling and endless retelling of the fable of Jim Morrison. But is it actually true? And if so, how come Jim never told it before 1970, at a time when his habit of putting people on with crazy stories, everyone, even himself, was so well established that his closest friends no longer knew whether to believe him or not when he came out with these things? Until he died and Ray took over the job to such spectacular effect, no one built up the myth of Morrison more than Jim himself. He was an incorrigible liar who rejoiced in driving people crazy with his lurid fictions. As Robbie Krieger later told me in an understated way, Jim had his own way of remembering things. I'm sure he believed what he was saying, like when he would tell people with a straight face how both of his parents were dead, and that he had no other family. A leap of faith, if there ever was one, is how John Densmore described the souls of the ghost story in his autobiography, Riders on the Storm. And John was close enough to Jim during his crazy storytelling years to smell the lies better than anyone. In the end, it hardly mattered whether the story was true or not. Jim Morrison was inhabited by the ghost of dead Indians? Far out, man. I knew it. The content on this channel is made possible from viewers like you. Help the channel grow by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.